Heyo, welcome everyone to episode 66 of Today in the Scene. I'm Joe with Indie Arcade Wave, and before we get everything started, I just want to say thank you to everyone that's been checking out the channel. Liking, sharing, subscribing means the world to us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. So this week, we're going to talk about a local arcade, and when I say local, I mean by me here in right about Minneapolis. This arcade's called Starcade. We did speak to Brian Armitage a while back in episode 32, who is a part owner of this arcade just outside of Minneapolis in Roseville. And this week we're going to speak with Paul. He's the one that is generally in the arcade running everything. Brian runs other businesses and kind of provides the arcade. And then Paul's the one that's there all the time. So I guess we'll bring in Paul and kind of ask him a little bit more about himself. How you doing, Paul?
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I'm glad we were finally able to do it. And I love the arcade. I've been over there a couple times. We had GBG there for a little bit, and I know you've added some new games in. But before we jump into all the games, let's just have you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about who Paul is.
Sure. My name is Paul Sarnan. Like you had mentioned, I'm one of the three owners at Starcade. So I've got a pretty lengthy background in marketing. I did agency side marketing for about 15 years and got into building startups and kind of entrepreneurship. In that process, I've started and run a genetics company currently, and have a medical device company that I co-founded as well. So, like the other owners, my background is pretty diversified, and I'm constantly busy. So, Starcade actually is kind of one of a couple of businesses for myself as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have something fun. It always like anytime Brian
Hmm.
comes up in conversation, it always makes me laugh because it's like, yeah, he's a surgeon, but he also like does arcade
Right.
parts on the side. And it's just for fun, sort of thing.
Yeah, we're all three of us, have medical backgrounds of some sort, and so it's been, I think we bonded over that experience of being business owners, and having that business experience, which I think allowed for making this partnership work really well. As we know, we've seen a lot of arcades that have come and gone. Uh, it's really easy to get trapped in like this is a hobby I want to make into a business and not really
Right.
understand how to run a business. And it's I actually underestimated a bit of how to run this business, and it's been a great experience and kind of refresh for me on the retail side to best understand how to learn best lessons and be close to our customers and understand really what makes Starcade tick. And it is really our customers and our guests that come in every single day, and that's what drives Starcade and makes it what it is.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about how Starcade came to be. I mean, you guys haven't been around for a super long time. I want to say it's been like almost a
Almost a year,
year-ish.
yep. A
Okay.
year in January, yep.
Okay. So just walk us through kind of like what that was like starting the arcade.
Yeah, it was. So Brian and Tom and myself it really is kind of started as a conversation. That it, it was casual and more like I think a lot of us had machines that were sitting in storage, just really not getting played or used. We've all been to the different arcades across the country and really loved different aspects of them. I took some time to kind of go around and better understand really just how are they making money, what's possible, what are because we love doing this stuff, but we knew it's going to take a lot of time. So there had to be a business model in there that was sustainable, because none of us wanted to lose money on this, and we knew there was going to be time invested, especially on my part getting kind of things up and running. So so there was a little bit of research that went in. I should say a little bit. It was pretty extensive, and I talked to a lot of different people to get a lay of the land. And really, we were looking at a space in Fridley originally, and looking at signing a lease there next to, I think, what was going to be a tap room. And then literally that month, COVID hit. I mean, it hit big, and we held back and decided not to open or sign any leases. And as things kind of got mellowed out a little bit from a business standpoint, like we couldn't nobody could really actively run an arcade. Everything was really shut down for quite a while. We got into conversations with Rosedale, and they gave us some opportunities to open a location there, and made it, kind of really something that we could do that was kind of not risk free, but it took some of the risks out of that, because we had no clue if the state was going to shut it down again. So we needed to know, like, hey, if we're going to put all this work of putting all these machines in and getting everything up and running, if we got shut down again, can this stop? So Brian, Tom, and I came together. We each kind of overlap in skill sets in some fashion, but really, came together to get the machines in. We started with about 120 machines, I want to say, in the old green mill space at Rosedale, and and literally it was just as simple as that. We got everything, literally plugged in and started marketing on Facebook and kind of giving people a heads up that we were open. We moved in November. We were still we couldn't actually open until January, so it kind of sat dormant for about 2 months, and then opened up, I believe, on January 4th. So literally, I didn't even know who the first customer was that came through the door. So it's pretty awesome. Community was really awesome about it. We didn't really have a ton of expectations, because COVID again threw kind of a wrench in any projections and planning. So it was really like, okay, is this even gonna happen? Are people even gonna show up? And they absolutely did, and it's grown every month ever since.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that it's growing and it's continuing to get bigger, because I remember I was in there and you guys had a great selection of games. Like, there were a lot of classics. There were a handful that were like pretty rare that I haven't really seen, like Blood
Sure.
Rage. Is that what the fighting?
Oh yeah, yep,
Yep,
yeah, yeah. So that's Brian's game.
yep.
He laughs. We laugh about that game because one of the quirks about the game is it technically was never finished. The code was never complete. So there's a bunch of broken pieces in the way the game plays. So it's one of those games that kind of has found its way into the arcade, and it's stuck around. We do refresh through attrition and games going down quite a bit. I would say it kind of ebbs and flows, but I would say we get a good maybe 10 to 15 games that come in and out every month, well, which I think is probably more than I've seen a lot of other arcades. Some of this just because between the three of us, we have probably over 600 machines. So there's plenty to choose from, and things are constantly kind of getting updated and things like that. I think again, one of the things I took for granted was just the sheer amount of maintenance that 100 plus machines takes. I remember the first week. I tell the story I've told a few people the story. The first week we were open, I think we lost about 25 machines that went down, and I was mortified. I was like, I can't believe this is, but it's a lot of these machines just hadn't been running 12 hours a day, and this is their first really stress test. So I think over the next few months, we really were able to kind of catch up and do all the routine maintenance that's required to have these machines run, at 12-hour bursts. And I think again, collecting and having, even 30 machines in your house, which some people do have, is it gives you kind of a taste of what that's like. But having over 100 machines, running 12 hours a day, there's really nothing like it. So I think that's one of the things most people that start these businesses, whether it's a barcade model or a free play entry model, really underestimate how much time and costs goes into maintaining these machines.
Yeah, I mean, you got to consider the fact that these machines are 30, 40 years old. Like there's going to have issues. They weren't built to last forever. So you got to replace stuff and fix things. I guess kind of along that vein, just go through some of the games that you guys have at Starcade. I know you have a pretty wide selection. Just let
Oh
people know what
gosh.
they can find.
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of bill ourselves as games from the 80s and 90s. It does stretch outside of that. We've had some games from the 70s, like Gunfight, obviously Asteroids technically. I mean, you probably or Space Invaders, we could probably push into the late 70s as well. So we got a few Bronze Age games, which are their black and whites, and then your really core 80s and 90s games, a lot of shmups, a lot of beat 'em ups, 90s games. We have a selection of Konami stuff, so we have a six men X-Men, and that's really super popular. Oddly enough, a couple of the other games that are really, really popular at our arcade are Police Trainer, uh, Johnny Nero, like the light gun games are just they get played all the time. We have let's see what else is really popular. The Star Wars uh, cockpit. Everybody comes into play all the time. So we've got probably one of the best collections of vector games that's available in the Midwest for play that you typically don't see. We've had quite a few early vector games from Cinematronics come through, like Tail Gunner, Speed Freak. We'll have Rip Off and Star Castle probably soon as well. We're having those redone. There's a really, really great repair guy that's local that does a lot of those Cinematronics vectors as well. And then into the newer stuff, one of the other funny games that we have a four-player, massively sized virtual tennis game, and that gets played a ton. We got that at auction a couple of years ago, and nobody wanted it because it was so big, but it gets played a ton. And we've also just brought in a DDR machine that's been upgraded to In the Groove. We don't technically do a ton of pinball, and people ask us a lot about that. Why do you not do pinball? Are you going to do pinball? And we've gone back and forth about it. Really, the challenge is from an economic standpoint is the sheer maintenance cost of pins versus arcade games and investment on that is we've talked to a lot of arcade owners, and a lot of them have kind of advised us to try to be careful about how you approach that. And so while we do have a couple pins in there for fun, and we've refreshed them a couple times, it's just been kind of a very challenging, I think, from a business model standpoint to make that work well. But I'll never say never because that could change too.
Yeah, I think pins are definitely like a nice part of an arcade.
Mm.
Sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. It's not the end of the world, but you're right. There's a ton of maintenance. I mean, you got a little metal ball flying around doing damage as opposed to an arcade cabinet where like you're just dealing with the people that are slamming on the sticks and trying to hit buttons. So that's not the end of the world, I guess. But I'm curious about indie games. I know there's a lot in the Midwest. Like pretty much every
Sure.
indie game you find are they're from the Midwest. You had Galactic Battleground in there for a little
Yep.
bit. What do you
Yep.
guys have in there right now?
So right now we have a Killer Queen in there. We have been working slowly on trying to develop more of a family friendly type of league environment. And that's been something that's kind of been on me to try to figure out what that formula looks like and generate that interest. I think with COVID, bringing kids in even smaller kids in elementary and junior high kids has been a little bit challenging. So I think we're hoping that picks up a little bit, but I'm really fascinated with, bringing in some of these what's considered indie bar games and barcades that typically don't see a lot of kid traffic into kind of a more family friendly environment, and seeing how that works. Outside of that, I'm trying to think if we have any other indie games. We're big fans of a lot of the local indie scene and indie games, and there may be some development on our part to actually create one too, but that's that's down the road as well. But like I said, huge fan. Galactic Battlegrounds, Cosmotrons, you know, and I know there's several others, but there's you know, we played them all, love them, you know, it's great stuff.
Yeah, the indie scene's a lot of fun. The games are a ton of fun, and I mean, who knows? We'll see them in more arcades pretty soon here once everything opens up a little bit more and we've got
I, I
more
I get
traffic.
asked about Death Ball too
Oh
occasionally.
yeah, love Death Ball.
Yeah.
That'll be one that hopefully will make its way over pretty soon. I guess I'm pretty curious about how you got started on all this. Like the arcade scene is it's pretty niche. Like not a lot of people are into
Mm,
collecting cabinets and repairing cabinets and stuff like that.
no.
So kind of give us a rundown of how you got into that. Where did that passion start?
Sure. You know, and I don't know if it started it any really any different than anybody else. I mean, I have a background in graphic design. I was a creative director early on in my career. So I would say my first interaction with, and again, I grew up, you know, a kid in the 80s going to arcades. It just, you know, I think my mom would tell you stories about me as a 4 year old wandering off in our local mall in northern Minnesota to our local arcade. And I still to this day can hear, you know, body blow from, you know, Punch Out. So, you know, there was obviously curiosity and you know, passion there early. And then, you know, for a lot of reasons, and you know, you grow up and you know, owning an arcade game for your own house is just you never saw that. So I think finally it got to the point where in my career, you know, our family had a large enough house where I could, you know, fit a game in the house. So, I created a multi-cade. It was a four-player. I was like, oh, this is great. Well, I'll make something that plays everything. Not really not knowing what I was doing, but going online and looking at how to build it and get the controls and you know how to interface with the computer. And I quickly realized that it just didn't feel right. It was fun, but it didn't feel right. And it's amazing to me, like how after all those years, you play a game and go, yeah, you know, the control stick or the joystick or the lever or the switches or the button just doesn't feel right. Then on top of that, I had used an LCD screen just because I had no clue how to you know the cabinet I bought was already stripped down. It didn't have a CRT monitor in it. It just it again wasn't it wasn't that it was horrible. It just didn't feel right. The controls didn't feel right. But it was I had so that's kind of really started where I started finding games that I really thought I would like as a from being a kid. And that's really how it's like I started digging around and realizing, oh, you can buy this stuff. And and uh, I went on a couple. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. Um, I have two you know, collector friends that you know Brian being one of them. I had a I'm really good at tracking down stuff like parts in games, and I just kind of like I had some downtime between jobs, and was uh I was just kind of like I just went and started calling operators like for in 100 mile radius, just called them all like and you know it wasn't email, I just literally called them, cold calling everybody, and made a list and got you know got operators to respond back to me and say like, can I come and take a look at your stuff? And Brian and myself and another arcade collector of our friend Eric went to Wisconsin from this one operator, and I showed up about 5 minutes late, and like I had no clue what I was looking at. There were parts everywhere, like and you know those guys kind of already knew what everything was, and so they knew what they were getting, and I had no clue. So it was kind of a learning experience for me to like, okay, I need to understand how what all this stuff is. Like I need to identify that PCB or joystick from like 10 feet away in the dark and know if I need it or not. Is it worthwhile getting things of that nature? So I did, and I kind of became self-taught. Learned a lot about just all the stuff in it, and just I love the hunt. I love finding new stuff. I love finding games that people have never seen before or haven't seen in a long time, and bringing it out and them just, even at the arcade. Uh, I don't know if anybody ever leaves without a smile on their face. I literally see grown people walk out smiling, and it's the best thing ever. That's why we do it. I mean, it is, while we're selling, we're selling time with these arcade games and getting to play them. Really, we're selling nostalgia for a lot of people. They come in, they haven't seen this stuff since they were kids, and it just brings joy to so many people.
Yeah, I mean that's the truth. Like I was a little young and kind of missed the arcade scene, but yeah, I mean even playing things like Galaga's in every arcade, and my dad and I played
Right.
that when I was younger, and that's still to this day my favorite arcade game. Like anywhere I go, I have to play at least one game on it. I just have to. And yeah, I mean Brian knows. I don't think I've ever seen that guy not be able to answer a question about an arcade. He just
Right.
knows everything about it. I guess one of the last things I wanted to ask you, just to kind of wrap everything up, is what
Sure.
advice would you give to someone that's thinking about starting an arcade? Like, there's so many people, like especially my age, that are like, I want to open an up
Sure.
arcade. Like, what do I need to do? Give them some advice for like what they should do and some things to avoid.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I've started a couple threads on some of the forums as well about it, because I've had really great mentors. We have a lot of other arcade owners that have really helped us out with, answering some of those questions. Um, it Opening an arcade is not a simple business to run, and I say that for a lot of reasons. You could have the machines, but not have the money or the resources to actually, float all the costs that goes into, making the arcade work. Um, One of the best lessons I learned is, like, it's really hard to make an arcade. When I talk about arcades, I'm talking specifically free play models. I can't speak to a barcade model because we don't sell, alcohol, and that business model works a lot differently. But on a free play model, really kind of, there's not an exact magic number, but you have to be around 75 to 80 games minimum to drive enough traffic to make it worthwhile. And that requires a certain amount of square footage. So, I mean, for example, the original Starcade square footage before we added on the party room and an additional 30 or 40 games was, roughly about 4,000 square feet. And that was pushing it. So, I mean, you have to know, you need to find a space that's low cost as well. If you have 80 to 90 games, people will come to you. You don't have to have high foot traffic areas, and high foot traffic retail is really high price per square foot. So keeping that price down is important for your longevity, because if you have to pay a high rent per month, that means there's no margin left. And um, really understand what your costs are going to be. Don't underestimate maintenance costs. I think we earmark probably on average about $3,000 a month for just maintenance. That's parts and, service time. Uh, and all of us can fix the games, but we have additional help as well. I don't know how some of the other arcades do it, but I think it does go down over time. But we're constantly cycling in a bunch of new games, so just really just get your costs in order and understand how much it's going to cost you per month. And like I said, if anybody is interested in those numbers, it was really helpful for me to understand the economics of it. Because once I understood that this is doable, and what you have to, what you have to make in order to, in order to make a profit. And nobody wants to lose money at this. Again, it is a passion for us, but we are all in this. We're business owners. We can't do it for free forever. Um, so, again, I think that's really some of the lessons that I've learned, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So, I've also seen, and I've come close at times. I mean, I think you mentioned I was there. I was at the arcade 70 hours, 80 hours a week, some weeks. It's not quite like that now, and I've had to pull back from some of my other business endeavors, but it's easy to get burnt out, and I've seen it with a lot of other arcade owners too. Is like you're there all the time, and it it's hard to have perspective if you're constantly there. So it's good to be able to pull back and let some other people do day-to-day operations, but you can't be away forever because getting away from that customer, getting away from your guests that's there, uh, you start losing perspective of what they want and what helps, what does your customer base really asking for. So we really I mean, I really spent a lot of time trying to understand, who is our customer, why do they come, what games are they looking for, and we've tried, I think, to the best of our ability to cater to the people that are asking for certain things. If I hear, like, I heard DDR for months. Can you guys get a DDR machine in? And I was like, we have one. We just need to get it fixed, and we figured it out and brought it in. And one game I'm hearing over and over again now that we're trying to track down is Joust. So that's another one that's on the docket. But yeah, I mean, you could, even if you don't have a game someone's looking for, we've got about 149 other games that you can play. So there's really nobody's ever sad.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like good advice to me. You got to know your customer, you got to be smart about your costs, just know your overhead, things like, I mean, standard business stuff.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on here, and I just want to, before we wrap everything up, just shout out the social media accounts so people can find you guys, as well as where the arcade is.
sure. Yeah, we're Starcade on Facebook, and we have an Instagram account. And we're at Rosedale Center in Roseville, Minnesota. And yeah, come on down. About 150 plus games from the 80s and 90s, $15, all you can play. We're open Wednesday through Sunday. We do private parties and events on Mondays and Tuesdays, which most arcades don't do. So you can rent the whole arcade, or you can rent the party room while we're open on the other days. And can't wait for you to come down and say hi.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to throw those links down in the description so that everybody can check them out. I just want to say thank you again, Paul, for coming on here. I really appreciate it. Love to share the arcades in the area because, I mean, Starcade's fun. They got a bunch of good games, and I really enjoyed the time that I was there.
Yeah, we thank you so much for having us on. We love what we do, and we're here for you guys. Just let us know how we can help.
Awesome. Yeah, anybody that's still watching, if you haven't liked, shared, or subscribed yet, do that. I really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.